Hello, and welcome to Kings Peak English Language Arts. And today we're talking about the elements of a story. The elements of a story are setting, plot, conflict, character, and point of view. Setting, the time and location in which a story takes place, is called the setting. For some stories, the setting is very important, while for others it's not. There are several aspects of a story setting that you should consider when examining how the setting contributes to the story. Is the place, a geographical location, important? Is the time period it's taking place important? And is the weather conditions important? Are the social conditions important? What's the daily life of the characters like? Are the mood and atmosphere important? What is being created at the beginning of the story by the setting? Then you have the plot. The plot is how the author arranges events to develop the basic idea. It is the sequence of events of the story. The plot is planned. Logical series of events having a beginning, middle, and end. There are 5 essential parts of the plot. 1. Introduction. The beginning of the story, where the characters and setting are revealed. Sometimes this is called the exposition. 2. Rising action. This is when the events in the story become complicated and the conflict is revealed. 3 is the climax. This is the highest point of interest and the turning point of the story. Read whether what will happen next. The conflict will be resolved or not. 4th is falling action. The events and complications begin to resolve themselves and the reader knows what has happened next and if the conflict will be resolved or not. 5 is the denouement, which is the final outcome or untangling of the story, which usually comes right after the resolution. You will see also inciting event, and often listed as well, which is the singular event which starts the conflict. Note that while most stories have all these parts, you don't actually have to have all of them. Conflict. Conflict is essential to a plot. Without conflict, there is no plot. It is the opposition of forces which ties one incident to the other and makes the plot move. Conflict is not merely limited to open arguments, rather any form of opposition that faces the main character within a story. Within a short story, there may be one central struggle, or there may be one dominant struggle with many minor ones, but there are 2 basic kinds of conflict. External conflict, a struggle with the force outside of oneself, and internal conflict, a struggle within oneself. A person must make a decision, overcome pain, quiet their temper, resist an urge, etc. There are 4 basic kinds of conflict. We have man versus man, which is physical conflict against another character. Characters lead struggles with his physical strength against other men, forces of nature, or animals. Man versus circumstances are the classical conflict. The leading character struggles against his fate, or circumstances facing them. It could be from the gods, or God, or it could be social circumstances, or the harsh realities of life. This tends to change based on time periods in which the story is written and set. Man versus society, or social conflict. The leading character struggles against ideas, practices, or customs, or other people within his or her society. And man versus himself, psychological conflict. The leading character struggles with himself, with his own soul, with the ideas of right and wrong, physical limitations, and choices, etc. Now, we're using the language common to literary criticism, which is male-centric, but we should really think of this as human versus human, human versus circumstance. Then we have elements of the short story relating to character. Now, character has 2 meanings. First, it can mean the characteristics of a person. In order for a person to seem real to a reader, its characters must seem real themselves. Characterization is the information the author gives us about the characters themselves. The author may reveal the character in several ways: his or her physical appearance, what he or she thinks, feels, or dreams, what he or she does or does not do, what he or she says about others, and what others say or react to about him or her. Characters are convincing if they are consistent, motivated, and lifelike, and unconvincing if they're not. Now, so when we talk about characteristics, they show up in 4 ways. Characters that are round, complex, have many-sided and complex personalities, dynamic, developing, many-sided personalities that change for better or worse by the end of the story. Static, stereotypes. Have 1 or 2 characteristics that never change or aren't emphasized. Flat, unchanging, have 1 or 2 characteristics that never change and are emphasized. Character can also mean a person in the story. One character that is central to the story, which all may eventually have importance, is the protagonist. We sometimes call this the main character. Sometimes you'll think of them as a good guy, although the protagonist does not have to be morally good. They just have to be the most important character in the story. The character who opposes the protagonist is called the antagonist. They may actively oppose the antagonist, or they may indirectly oppose the antagonist. You also have foils, which are characters that contrast the main characters of the story. They are the opposite and point out their flaws or their good characteristics. And you have supporting characters, characters that add to the story but are not necessarily vital. Elements of a story. Point of view. The point of view, or POV, is defined by the angle from which the story is told. There's the innocent eye. The story is told through the eyes of a child, his or her judgment being different from that of an adult. A stream of conscious. The story is told from the reader. It feels as if they were inside the head of one of the characters and knows all their thoughts and reactions as they would have it naturally. But when we think about point of view, we also generally mean POV as the angle from which the story is told. The most common is first person. The story is told by the protagonist or one of the characters who interacts closely with the protagonist using the pronouns I, me, we. The reader sees through this person's eyes as he, she experiences it and knows what he or she knows and feels. Then there is point of view, third person, and there are 2 types of third person point of view. There's omniscient, limited. The author tells a story in third person using pronouns they, she, he, it, etc. We know only what the character knows, what the author allows him or her to tell us. We can see the thoughts and feelings of the character as if the author chooses to reveal them to us, even if they're not stated out loud. But that's all we get. And then there's third person objective or third person omniscient. The author tells a story in third person. It appears as though the camera is following the characters, going anywhere, recording only what is seen and heard. There is no comment on the characters or their thoughts. No interpretations offered. The reader is placed in the position of spectator without the author there to explain. The reader has to interpret the events on his or her own. And then there's a rare kind of point of view, which is second person. Second person point of view is a story told to another character using the pronouns you, and yours. It is not often used in fiction, but is often used in letters, speeches, and other forms of nonfiction. There are some fiction that uses it, but it's pretty rare. And the last element of a story is theme. Theme in a piece of fiction is a controlling idea or central insight. It's the author's underlying meaning or main idea that he or she is trying to convey. It may be the author's thoughts about a topic or a view of human nature. The title of the story usually points to what the writer is saying, and he or she may use figures of speech to emphasize his or her theme, such as symbol, allusion, simile, metaphor, hyperbole, and irony. If you don't know what those are, we'll talk about them through the course of the course. Remember, a theme is a topic and a controlling idea. Some examples of themes from literature and film are: things are not always as they appear to be, love is blind, believe in yourself, people are afraid of change, don't judge a book by its cover. Each one of those instances, you will see there is a topic, love, and then a controlling idea is one. Those are your elements of a story.